Hello and welcome to this edition of Brilliant but Lazy. I'm Alan.
I'm Josh, and we're talking about a new movie on the night it came out, like hours after we saw it. I'm super
Yes.
excited.
Yes. I was texting my co-host of You Have to Watch This podcast saying, guys, I'm seeing The Flash in 2 hours. And my co-host Devin was like, oh, I didn't know it was out yet. And I was like, it's out in 2 hours. Like, that's the joys of being on summer vacation. I can just go to the movies any time of the day I want. So, yeah.
you know, my good friend Brian, he came out with me tonight, and Maddie, we three went to see it. He's married now. He's got a kid, so he's got a different lifestyle. But there was a time when me and him, there was one summer where we went to a Thursday night showing every night of the summer, but that was still back when it was midnight showing. So
Oh, wow.
for a full summer from May to August, every week we saw a midnight movie. I can't remember any of the good movies. I just remember no matter what, if it was a bad weekend, like we saw Piranha 3D in the theater for some reason. I don't know why we saw that movie, but it was the only movie that came out
Yeah.
that week, and so yeah. So now, I mean, I feel like we're pampered because I saw Across the Spider Verse at like 2:30 in the afternoon one day, and then here it's barely 10 o'clock where I'm at. I would have had to wait another 2 hours to see this,
Yeah.
10 years ago. So we're definitely pampered now for
We
sure.
we really are. And then I'll at some point I will have to tell you my Piranha 3D story.
Okay.
It's too late in the night for me to tell you that now.
Okay.
But remind me, and I will tell you. But today we're talking about the freshly released The Flash, starring Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, and yeah, Ezra Miller.
Yep.
um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we're going to talk about this movie, spoiler free, for a bit, and then deep dive into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, we're going to talk about it, give you our general thoughts about it, and then we'll let you know when we're going to dive into the spoilers. So, um, before we start, though, do we want to address the Ezra Miller in the room at all, or just
I mean, we briefly talked about this. Oh no, wait, no, that was at our nonprofit board meeting. That wasn't on Brilliant but Lazy.
yeah?
We could briefly discuss it. Where would you like to start? Take that
I
conversation.
I think since we're part of Victims and Villains, which focuses on mental health through pop culture, I think it's very important to address the issues that Ezra Miller has been going through. Um, Not to excuse any of the alleged crimes that they have done. Um, they seem to be taking steps to better themselves, which I think is very commendable. I still think it for me, it kind of still tainted the overall experience of the film. Because there are a few moments that we'll talk about where I'm like, it's very ironic that you're having him say this.
Mm.
But I was curious, knowing everything about the Ezra Miller situation going on right now, did that taint your viewing experience at all?
Um, I I'll be honest, it didn't. It
Okay.
didn't. And for the same reason why I don't feel super shitty when I see a Robert Downey Jr. Film, or when I see a Mark Wahlberg film, or any other film that starred somebody that went to prison, or got in some legal trouble or did some shitty things. I think last year was a very chaotic year for Ezra Miller, and there was a point in the April, May, June timeline where it seemed like every other week it was, what did Ezra do this week that pissed somebody off? And um, It definitely seemed, well, actually it started way before there. It
Yeah.
started back in like January of last year. So it was like the first half of last year. It was just a roller coaster. There were things in the beginning that people were suggesting that he had a mental breakdown, and this was or they had a mental breakdown, and this was the chaotic aftermath of it. That doesn't excuse their actions, but there was a point in the summer where things stopped. They went to court. They handled their court cases. There's no pending court cases anymore for the things that have been reported, and they've been out of trouble since July, August of last year. I got a little scared earlier this week because I saw a headline that said Ezra Miller makes comments about incident at the Flash premiere, and I was like, oh my god, there was an incident at the Flash premiere, like he couldn't even get through the premiere. And no, it was just a shitty headline. They were talking about the previous incidents, and he made a comment about it at the
Yeah.
Flash premiere. So I think the fact that we've had almost a year of peace, I think, I I really like Ezra Miller as an actor, and I could see a future where they have a comeback. I don't blame Warner Brothers and DC for putting this film out, since there was
Yeah.
so much work already put into it. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be a long hiatus before we see a comeback from them.
Oh yeah. Um, okay. Well, now that we've addressed that,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I want to talk about our thoughts of the film. Um, I I want to like this film a lot more than I did. There there are a lot of issues that I have with this film itself, which we'll deep dive into. But I think there's a certain part of it that really works well for me, and that was the part I was looking forward to the most. There are elements of this that I think didn't didn't sit well for me visually, while other things did. Um, I, I'm very mixed on this film. What did you think?
Yeah, so I don't have TV, so I didn't see any of the TV spots, and I generally try to avoid spoilers going into this film. However, on Facebook and on Twitter, people kept on posting a couple screen grabs from the trailer where, like, Ezra was calling out in the red Flash suit, and it just looked weird. Or Ezra would be standing next to other Ezra, and their suits would just look super rubbery and weird. And I'm like, well, you freeze frame anything, and it could look bad. But then if you go into the actual movie, there's a lot of technical issues
Mm-hmm.
in this film from a visual standpoint, and a lot of visual choices that were made, that at one point I thought was just super shitty CGI, and then it felt like, oh no, maybe they meant for it to be more an animation style, but then it clashed. There's just a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of the story itself, I thought for the most part, I really enjoyed the story. I liked seeing some characters come back from the Snyderverse. I liked kind of the direction of the film. Um, the ending was fun. Um, I guess the things that kind of brought me down were the technical stuff, and I could have sworn that the director or somebody had really put this film up as the end of the Snyderverse, and it didn't feel as much of a ending as I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, we'll have to deep dive into that because that's
Yeah,
going to
sure,
be
that's
like
more
a whole
spoilery.
hour long conversation. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, no, the technical stuff is what got me. But
yeah,
story wise, I really enjoyed the story of this. Um, Marketing wise, I think the whole Ezra Miller situation where they didn't focus the marketing on him both helped the film because they didn't show 2/3 of the movie because it's all Ezra Miller acting against Ezra Miller. They focused
Mm.
on the other stuff, which got me to go see it, but also like if they didn't show you that stuff, if they didn't show you the Keaton of it all in the trailers, like if he wasn't on this poster that we have up beside us, like that moment would have been so different. Like if you don't know going in that Batman's in this movie, like it's a completely different film.
I think it would have been near impossible to hide that fact. However, I do agree with you that the marketing wasn't very Ezra centric, and because of that, even and I have avoided every TV spot, but even in the trailers, they showed damn near every second of the action. Like I
Mm-hmm.
am straining right now to think of things that were not in the trailer. At least snippets. Of course, not everything was in the trailer, but they put so much in the trailer,
There was something
and
from every sequence in there.
pretty much, and that was and definitely from every Batman sequence, like every drop, every pretty much most of his one liners, and just I get it. They were trying to hype you, but they could have saved a little bit more for the film, and that does tend to irritate me when the trailers kind of spoil so much of the fun stuff. It wasn't all the fun stuff. There were definitely some fun stuff that was not in the trailer that I laughed a good laugh at. But
Yeah,
yeah, they showed a lot.
they really did. Is there anything else non-spoilery that we want to get into?
I would just say that one of the things I consistently heard from people that saw this over the past year, because they've been screening this film for so long,
Mm-hmm.
uh, one of the things that I kept on hearing that people were like, is that really to be trusted? Is that Ezra Miller's performance sold the film? And I would agree with that. I thought Ezra Miller's performance was the best he's performed in this role. In all the films he's had this role, I thought he was amazing in this film. I know it's kind of hard to say when you consider the
Yeah,
real life stuff, but I thought he was great in the film.
this is probably his best performance, but there are still moments because he's such a there's such a heavy story, and when you have an
Yeah.
actor acting against themselves but not really having them there, like there were moments in those sequences where it just felt like he was acting to a brick wall, and
Mm.
it just didn't mesh well for me in spots. I think there are moments where he does shine, or they do shine, but it it it's the best performance they've given in the DC film so far.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of not misinformation, but a lot of how am I trying to say this? A lot of well, I'll just say it. There's a lot of headlines and personalities online right now that are like, oh my gosh, DC's considering keeping Ezra Miller as the Flash, or oh my gosh, Ezra Miller is going to continue as the Flash in the DC in the new in James Gunn's DC universe. I've seen nothing to suggest that that's the case. Nobody on this team was gonna start saying this is the last time you'll see Ezra Miller as the Flash as a way to market this film. So I really feel like just because they didn't say that doesn't mean this isn't his last performance. Uh, and I feel like some people were like trying to like stir the pot in the last couple of weeks by saying they've forgiven Ezra for everything and they're moving forward. I haven't seen James Gunn hint that once, or anybody in the current DC leadership regime even tease that. But
The
this was
only
Ezra's film, and I really appreciated Ezra in this film.
the only person I've seen say anything about that to that degree is the director Andy Muschietti.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he has said if there was a sequel to this film, he would definitely want to work with Ezra again.
But that's such a loaded statement. If there
Yeah,
was a sequel to this film, there's been no chatter of there being a sequel to this
yeah.
film. There's nothing. There's no questionable Flash symbol on James Gunn's wall for when he was doing all
Mm-hmm.
that layout for the next 10 years. I think that's a loaded statement that was meant to be like
Yeah.
not a nail in the coffin, but yeah.
And the film itself doesn't really set up a sequel that much. There is one thing that could potentially be the story for the sequel, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the future of the DC universe is still so up in the air. Because even with that 10-year plan, that's not everything we're going to get. Like, there are other projects that they
Sure.
haven't announced yet. So
Sure.
could they be working on a potential sequel to this? Sure. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
So the way we do things here on Brilliant But Lazy is we rank things not by letters or numbers or of stars or anything. We call it either brilliant or lazy. Josh, what do you think of The Flash? Is it brilliant or lazy?
I would call it lazy brilliant.
Okay.
Lazily brilliant. I
Okay.
I feel like there's got
I
to be a merge of the two.
yeah.
There's got to
I'm
be a
just
middle ground.
I think the middle ground is just brilliant but lazy. Like it, there are
Okay,
moments of this that are brilliant, and there are just other things that are
there you go.
very lazy.
That sounds better than lazily brilliant. It's
Yeah.
literally the title of our show.
Yeah.
So this would be. I agree. This would be brilliant. But it was lazy yeah, shockingly so. Like I feel like as long as this film's been in production and as long as they've been teasing and holding on to this film, there were choices that were made that I can't unsee.
Yeah. All right. So there you have it. That's our spoiler-free thoughts on The Flash. If you have not seen the film, go check it out. In the meantime, we're going to deep dive into spoilers. So let's get right into it with the spoiler talk. Okay. Let's talk about the CGI babies.
That's not even the first thing in the movie that kind of.
Oh, really? What was the first thing? Because that's very early on in the film.
That's very early on in the film, and it's very much something that I couldn't unsee. But it's 2023, and we still can't get him to run right. Like I know Ezra Miller has his own running thing, but I'm not talking about his form. I'm just talking about they still haven't made a way to make the Flash look cinematically cool when he's running. It still looks like they're just kind of jogging, and the green screen in the background is moving. And I was like, is this a movie or is this slightly more expensive episode of CW's The Flash? I mean, and then he runs across the water, and I was just like, this just doesn't look that great. Like, it just doesn't. It still doesn't.
I'm of a different mindset. That first running scene, having watched all 9 seasons of The Flash and 10 seasons of Smallville, I thought that was some of the more interesting running scenes that I've seen from DC. Because it was at least different. Like, it didn't focus on him so much, just the world around him.
Sure, when they panned out, it worked, but when you could see his movement, I just didn't care for it. But
yeah, I mean, that's just.
But it wasn't as bad as CGI babies.
The CGI babies, like the fact that you open this film with the Flash putting a baby in a microwave, is not a sentence I ever thought I'd say, but that's the world we live in. And here we are. The CGI, the
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the test footage for Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, you had the shapes, everything was super rubbery. Like you could just tell immediately that it wasn't real, and it just looked like unrefined Deadpool animation to me.
I really started to wonder on the drive home talking to my wife about this because she went with me. Do you think they just cut the budget like during the animation process? Because that's around the time probably where they were cutting everything, like when Batgirl got shelved. Like, do you think Warner Brothers was like, hey, this is all the money you have left?
I will answer that for you once you answer me this.
Okay.
I don't have it with me, but every time I go to the movie theater, I come home with a little, with a
Mm-hmm.
little collectible. I came home with a Across the Spider-Verse collectible cup because there were no Flash merch. Was there
Yeah.
any at your theater?
Nope.
Okay, so I think that might be part of the answer to the question. It's kind of seemed like they weren't willing to invest on the merch. Maybe they weren't willing to invest on some of the graphics. Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking
I
that
I
might be the case.
I think that is the case, and it's a shame because the CGI in the real world stuff, like the babies falling, like even Batman's cape, it didn't work. Like it just doesn't work for the world that they've established for the DC universe. Like it does. Like the CG's better in Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Um,
I know. I thought that film looked really good actually. For as
yeah,
as much as I didn't really care for that film, or as meh as it was, it looked really good.
and like I'm willing to forgive some of the CGI in the Speed Force when he's time traveling. Like all
Yeah,
of that looking the way it does, I can accept because that's otherworldly. It's a style choice, and I can accept that. Like you're like
yeah,
those renderings of all those characters the first time he goes through, like his parents and the Justice League. I'm fine with that. Like that works for me because I can look at that as a style choice. But when you have real world characters looking like they're from a video game in 2007, then I have an issue with it.
and then it was just so stark when it shifted. So when he
Mm-hmm.
takes the baby out of the microwave, he's holding a CGI baby, and then it like pans over his shoulder, and he's holding a real baby, and I was like, ah! I was like, that was okay, and
It
I'm sure a sequence like that would be hard to film, but we are in 2023. I feel like there was it felt like it was crossing. I felt like we were back watching the Across the Spider Verse, where we're switching in and out of animation styles
yeah.
throughout the scene. It did feel a little weird.
I think some of the animation in Into the Spider Verse or Across the Spider Verse looked better than the animation in this. Um,
Yeah.
but at a certain point, I just had to accept that was the special effects. Um,
Yeah, especially with the Speed Force. What do they call it? Not a dome. The Speed Force. What's the thing in Rome?
Coliseum.
Colosseum.
Yeah.
Colosseum. So when they did that the first time, it was jarring, and I was like, "This is." And then when they kept on doing it, I was like, "Okay, I guess if I see it as an artistic choice, I can accept it." But then I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, and we can go more into detail. When they started showing other people
Oh.
like cameos, there were points I was like, okay, that's supposed to be CGI. But then there were other points where I was like, it looks like bad deep fake. Like, have you ever seen some of those deep fake videos where
Mm-hmm.
they're not looking straight onto the camera? If they look like this, there'll be like a weird shadow on the face. But then when the face straightens, it looks better. It felt like they were doing that with some of the characters, and I was like, this is this is not a cool moment like it should be because it looks bad.
It says something when the best of those cameos is from the 1950s.
Mm,
Like George Reeves,
sure.
spoil like George Lee Reeves looked great. Like his cameo, fantastic because it's just black and white footage of him as Superman.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve, like that's the one that I had heard about. Like the rumors, I was like, if this happens, great. I don't know if they're going to do it justice. And then I was severely disappointed because like it was cool and all, but it just didn't look great. Like it,
On Helen
especially.
Slater right next to him, it didn't look. Again, there were points where the faces weren't looking straight on,
Mm-hmm.
and it was weird that it was that deep fake trying to generate
Yeah.
the angle of the face thing, and I was like, yeah, but this is a movie. This isn't a cheap free app that you download on your phone and you put somebody's face in a scene. It's supposed to be better than that.
I and what upset me the most about that is it. It's just disrespectful. Like
I
if
kind of
it
felt that way too.
if it
Yeah.
looked better, I'd be more accepting of it. But it's just
I'm just surprised they tried, because everything else in the Colosseums were animated. Even Nick Cage was animated. I knew exactly what it was. As soon as I saw the spider and the hair, I'm like, this is the Superman Lives. And then when it turned out to be a CG Nick Cage, I was like, all right, that's fine. But then why try to do a realistic version of Helen Slater and Christopher Reeves if everything else in the Coliseum is kind of this animated realistic thing? You could have done that with them and it would have looked better. It would have still been cool to see them, and it would have looked better than this deep fake stuff.
The other thing that bothers me about that whole sequence, and I know we're jumping ahead to like the end of the film,
we are,
but
we can go back,
is why so heavy on Superman cameos?
I thought so too. Yeah, like they even showed who's the 60s Batman?
Adam West.
Even they barely showed him. Like he was like out of frame and like weirdly to the side, and they kind of showed one old Flash. I forgot it was Jay Garrett.
Yeah. Was that Teddy Sears? Was that him?
Yeah. I read that it was Teddy Sears because I wanted to look it up to see if that was really him. Yeah. So it was him, and I guess that's your connection to the CW Flash. They didn't want to use the Flash from the show and complete the circle. But yeah, it was very Superman heavy.
Yeah.
And then we didn't get the one Superman I was waiting for, like we didn't get even a CGI version of Henry Cavill.
You did on the TV at the beginning.
You got the back of him. Yeah, the back of him. But I did think that was weird.
Yeah. All right. So enough about the ending of the film and all the Superman stuff. Plot wise, like story wise, I really did enjoy this film. It takes a lot from Flashpoint with him messing with time to save his mom. But it's not a Flashpoint story. Like he's in an alternate timeline where he does change things, but it's the one thing about Flashpoint is it's always him living in that world and not two Barrys. So when you have the two Barrys, I thought was a very interesting dynamic, because then you get to explore a little bit of the Flash's origin story, which we never got in the DCEU. So you get to learn a little bit more about the Flash's origins and the Order 66 that is the battle for Metropolis, because it seems to be like everything just goes back to that. So
yeah. I did like that, because there was a point in the film and I was like, wait a second, did we ever see his origin? We didn't, did we? Because Bruce just finds him in his little cave thing. So yeah, I was excited to see him recreate that. I did think that sometimes it definitely looked like they weren't looking at each other, like they couldn't get that thing. Sometimes it looked really good, but sometimes it did look like, like the old TV things where you'd have two Urkels and one would be looking kind of off to the side, not really at the other Urkel, and that happened. That happened here. I did think some of their interactions were good. I liked the younger, stupid hippie Barry, and this Barry had to be the adult in the room, which was different from his previous entries in the DC films. So I thought that was fun.
I did enjoy that aspect of it, because like Barry Allen is the kid of the Justice League, and having him have to step into that mentor role was interesting to see. That was not something I really expected from the film, because I didn't think the other Barry would get his powers until later on in the movie, not as early as he did.
Yeah. I was definitely sad. I knew it was coming. I was sad that they recasted the Flash's dad. The guy that plays him, Billy Crudup, in the Justice League film. I love Billy Crudup. He's a great actor. But I think he was filming the next season of the morning show, and that's why he couldn't film this.
Yeah. Speaking of the Justice League, I thought it was very interesting that this film acknowledges Zack Snyder's Justice League as canon and not the Justice League.
In what way?
So when Barry first time travels and he's talking to Ben Affleck in the alley,
Yeah.
he's talking about that, like the time in Russia, like
Uh-huh.
like but more like he's referencing the time travel in Russia at the end of Justice at
Yeah.
the end of
Yeah.
Snyder Cut. Um, and even Iris West saying like, I think I saw you like a few years ago. It's like,
That's
no, you
right.
didn't.
That's right. She does mention that's the hot
Yeah.
dog scene, which wasn't in the job. So, as that was a confusion of mine, but I think I just figured it out in my head. So there are times in this movie where when he makes the choice and then he gets kicked out of the Coliseum and there's two Barrys.
Mm-hmm.
That's because he went into a branch off type thing. But
Yes.
when him and Barry rewound themselves in the battle, they were just going back in time like in Russia. That's why there wasn't four Barrys and then six Barrys and then whatever.
Yes.
Okay, because at
Yeah.
first I was like, wait, did they mesh with their bodies or did they not? And
They
yeah,
were.
okay,
Yeah. There was. Yeah. So when the evil speedster pushes Barry out of the Coliseum, that puts him in a timeline with another Barry. But once they
yeah,
start time traveling, they just take over. So
yeah, yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
what do you think of the whole Colosseum thing?
I thought it was a very interesting way of showing the time travel. Because it's kind of tricky to like. This is a very high concept thing to understand if
Yeah,
you're novice to this stuff. Because there was a row of people in front of me who had no idea what was going on. Like one lady just got up and got popcorn and came back. Like she didn't like they were talking and like I don't think they understood what was happening to
yeah,
the point where they just left all of their trash in the theater afterwards. Like, oh come on, like don't be that person. But to visually represent what is happening, I think that's an interesting way of showing it.
yeah. I don't know if that's from the comics or if that's a choice they made from the movie,
I'm
but
not sure either. I'm not very up on my Flash comics, but
yeah.
I did watch 9 years of the TV show, and I think visually that was more interesting than anything they did to represent time travel.
Yeah, I mean the in Zack Snyder's Justice League, the scene where he fixes things, that was a cool scene. That was
Mm-hmm.
really, really cool. But that was like building things back, and that's why it worked. I think I'm trying to, because they did a animated version of Flashpoint, and I don't know if that was just a super fast Speed Force or if it was like the Speed Force with the Wonka Tunnel with like things coming by in the this was definitely a more visual representation of things changing by rings and versions, and so
Yeah,
it was a choice. I thought it looked dumb at times, but at other times I was like, okay, I kind of see what you're doing here. um so that was interesting. When the other Colosseums started to converge, it was just a little much, and then especially when they were less Flash centric. Like we did it, like I don't understand why other superhero coliseums would be crashing into the Flash one. Like how does the battle going on right now make Nick Cage's Superman come about or something? I just don't understand why. I feel like those were just thrown in for cool cameo things. I don't get what the purpose was of them though,
I
or
think
how they were affected.
I think the purpose of it was everything that the other the evil speedster was doing was affecting the fabric of the multiverse.
Mm.
And so um it's kind of like if you leave the spaghetti on the pot too long,
Mm-hmm.
like it starts getting gummy and like things start to merge
Mm-hmm.
together. Like things were falling, like it was unstable, and because of all of that, all those changes, so things started to converge on themselves.
What did you think of them choosing to do the second Barry turning into this kind of monster versus a reverse Flash scenario?
Um, I saw it coming from the toy line.
Oh, I saw it coming from the first time we saw the monster, but
Yeah,
I
I did
yeah,
too. I was very curious if they were going to do something else with it. But what I did not see coming, and I know this is jumping to the end. I did not see. Well, we'll talk about that then.
Yeah.
I thought the evil speedster looked cool. I really enjoyed that. But I kind of wish they would have used him more, because the film really like focuses on Zod as the big bad.
Yeah.
When he really isn't.
Not really. I'm glad they didn't try to stuff a Reverse Flash into this movie, because there was no room for him.
Yeah.
This was, Reverse Flash is the Flash's ultimate nemesis. He's caused a lot of problems. There's even some version of the comics where he's the one that kills the Flash's mom, and I was happy that they didn't try to wedge that in, because there was just no room for another person to be.
Yeah. And they did something very interesting with Barry's mom, where they don't tell you who killed her.
Yeah, I was kind of thrown by that, but I guess that's fine.
That's like the only plot thread that they have for a sequel. Like, if you're going to do Reverse Flash in the next one, you can tell that story, or whoever you want to do. Like,
sure.
I don't know, Mr. Mixel Pickle Lips or whatever. But
well, we haven't talked about Michael Keaton, and I know that was probably the thing you were most excited about. So
that was.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about first of all, I loved the line of, "Is this hell, or what is this hell?" when they're walking up to the mansion. I cracked up so much in that when you see the foggy mansion and everything.
Yeah.
That was just great. But what do you think about the introduction to Michael Keaton?
I really enjoyed how they presented him as a loner, as like a recluse. His choice of music was fantastic. I really enjoyed his introduction. I thought the focus on the flip flop was interesting. Like, he's just kicking ass in one flip flop and a robe.
The hair and everything.
The hair. My wife absolutely loved the whole. Wait, you're Batman? I thought this was the cousin dinner. Like.
Yeah, he was not paying attention at
Um,
all.
but yeah, I think they handled the reintroduction of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne and Batman very well. And I think that's one of the strongest parts of this movie, is the way they handle this, like, that version of Batman.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he was eccentric. I thought that was kind of an extension of his character from what we saw in '89 in Returns, without Alfred there. Like, he hadn't let himself go, but he definitely become. It seemed like he was this kind of unorganized recluse. At first, I was like, "Oh, they're doing a nod to Frank Miller's Batman with the hair and him hopping around," and then I realized, no, that was Frank Miller's Green Arrow in the Batman comic, and where he had that long hair and the beard, and he was and he's jumping around in his feet, and so that was a choice. But then they there wasn't a shaving scene, but they shaved him later. But yeah, I liked that. I liked his he was smart enough to understand what was going on. Like, he was intelligent enough to, in fact, educate Second Barry on what was really happening, and then just saying, yeah, no, I have no will to be involved in this.
Yeah.
So I did like that. Yeah.
I was very surprised by that version of Batman explaining the idea of a multiverse. Because we're led to believe that the world that they live in doesn't have metas in it. There's no Justice League, so there's not really that heavy sci-fi stuff. There's a guy who fell in a vat of chemicals, and a woman who fell into the street and got licked by cats.
Yeah, he seemed very accepting that there was a spaceship in the sky. There was no, oh my god, yeah.
So I was kind of surprised
But
by that.
what would you rather? What would you rather? Would you rather have a competent Batman that was able to go with the flow, or a what the hell are you? How can you move so fast? This is trippy. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
understand this. You know?
I would much rather have the Batman we got in this.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that this is the same Batman from Batman and Batman Returns? Or do you think this is a parallel universe version of Batman?
I think it's vague enough that it could be either. I didn't
Okay.
see anything alarm. There was certainly plenty of nods to '89 Batman, including the room of Asian statue things that
Yeah.
you see in the first film. There's
King of the
certainly a
Wicker
lot
people.
of yeah, yeah. So there was enough things suggesting it could be. I didn't think there was anything alarmingly saying nope, this has changed and it's not. So I don't know.
Yeah. I want to believe that it's like everything, like those movies happened, but this is a different timeline. Like this, that's
Yeah,
not how that world ends.
yeah,
Because I think I read somewhere that ideally, like Batman and the Christopher Reeve Superman films were supposed to be in the same universe, which is viable.
maybe, yeah.
But
So yeah, I mean, we'll never get that Batgirl film, and see if this
no.
crossed over into that. I know that Keaton also filmed some things that were supposed to be at the end of Aquaman, back when Aquaman was coming out before the Flash. So I
Hmm.
think they cut that from the end of Aquaman. So this might be the last we see of this version. But yeah, I mean, it could have been the same one. It could have been a
Yeah.
slightly different one. Who knows?
Having seen this film and how they handle the Keaton Batman by the end of it, like I don't think they releasing Batgirl would be so confusing to people if they put this version of the Flash out and then put out Batgirl.
Well,
Because
that's why I was, and yeah, I think people are still going to be confused because again, when there were people selling this as the end of the Snyderverse, as wrapping up, all I could think about was, okay, yeah, I'm sure they're not going to do the Flashpoint story, but there's a version, there's a way that you could do that to where it ends with, oh shit, here we are in the new DC universe that James Gunn and Saffron are taking forward. There wasn't any of that at the end of this film. In fact, it felt like, oh, we're gonna get another Flash film in a couple years. There was no like finale, and I don't know if there was a finale at one point, and then because they have to do Aquaman and Blue Beetle later, they decided to cut that. But unless there's a very interesting event at the end of Aquaman, people are going to be confused already. They're going to be like,
yeah,
wait, where does the one thing end? And this, was there an event, or are they just starting over, or what?
because if Aquaman stories are known for anything, it's multiverse shenanigans.
Yeah.
Uh,
I just felt
um,
like this was an opportunity for them to create an event
it
that would
was,
then introduce
and
the new.
that's what I was expecting. And I feel like I talk about this every time we talk about DC stuff, and it's like I don't know what the plan is now. Like I still don't know what the plan is.
Yeah.
Um, I
Maybe there
feel
won't be. Maybe James Gunn will just come out at the beginning of the first films of his slate and be like, "Yo, all that other shit didn't happen. All right, watch this film." And then it just starts.
yeah, but then you have to then you lose John Cena as Peacemaker. You lose it's just
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't
so
know.
from what I understood, the end of the Flash is the start of the new DC universe of films. So Blue Beetle is the first film that takes place in the new world. Then you have
But
Aquaman, which is part of this world.
we could talk about this for hours. But somebody did recently ask James Gunn if that's the case, and he said, "This is what he said." He said, "Blue Beetle is the first character in the new DCU, but it's not the first new DCU film." What does that mean? What does that mean? If the film doesn't count,
I think they are adapting it into whatever this new world is going to be.
okay.
Because I think because they're stuck with these three films now that are done, I think, and need to be released because they're not going to
How
shelve.
done are they? Because this one did feel like it was
I
completely done.
I don't know, but Aquaman comes out at the end of the year, right? Or did that get pushed to
Yeah,
next year?
I think it's coming out by
They
November.
have these scripts that need to be that these films that needed to be done while they were handed over everything
Yeah.
post merger, and you have to try to figure out a way to adapt them into this new universe. My question is like, if this is going to be part of that, like if this is the starting point of what story you're going to tell, why does it have to be George Clooney? Like,
And again, I didn't feel like that was a. I didn't feel like that was the intro to the new. I thought that that was just a little gimmick at the end, and I thought there was going to be another scene where he undoes that or something like that. It felt more like a cliffhanger. Oh, he's
yeah,
going to have to fix it in the next Flash film. Then this is the beginning of James Gunn's new universe.
yeah, like, because do you really do? Are we living in a world where we're gonna get Batman and Robin 2.0? Like George Clooney
I
returns,
was
Chris
literally
O'Donnell
waiting for Chris O'Donnell to like walk out of the
with
crowd
his
and
earring. Yeah,
or like come out from the other side and be like, "Get in the car, kid." Like I was waiting for that. I really
yeah.
was. Uh, I did like the F bomb drop. That was funny because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, "Wait, what the um, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was a funny. But I didn't think of it as, oh, we're going forward with this. I thought it was just a gimmick at the end. It didn't. I feel like well, we're never gonna get it. We're never gonna get it. But I really wanted, if this was to be the end, I wanted like a send off to the trilogy or to the Trinity, and I wanted, like, at the end of Endgame, you got this really cool signature credit sequence with the main Avengers characters, and even though we knew MCU wasn't gonna stop there, it was kind of felt finale-ish. And if
Hmm.
this were to be the end of the Trinity, I kind of wanted a send-off moment, and we didn't get that. And then I wanted a, instead of a stupid end credit scene that really didn't mean anything, I wanted like everything goes white and says, James Gunn is bringing the new DCU to you in 2024 or something like that.
That post credit scene pissed me off because for the last 2 weeks, all I've seen is DC is not showing the post credit scene because it has a major cameo that's going to affect the future of the DC films. And I was like,
I
okay,
saw
like,
something that says it features a reunion, and I was like, okay, this is the Trinity send off, but nope.
and then it's drunk ass Jason Momoa walking out of a bar and pretty much just saying, "Oh yeah, Batman's different, but you're still Aquaman. See you in December." Like, I was like, really? Like, that's the big cameo twist that you had to hide from all the press screeners?
Yeah, and I
Like,
knew he was gonna be in it because it showed Jason Momoa singing "I'm a Sailor" in the song credits, and I was like, oh, okay, so Jason Momoa is gonna be in this next scene. But I thought it was gonna be a little more, and I really did think we were gonna get one more Henry Cavill. We got Gal Gadot in here,
yeah,
shoehorned in, and it's, yeah, God, yeah. There must be something in the contract that says we can't show her without her pausing for the Hans Zimmer music. And as much as I like that music, it does start to get corny when she's like at the camera for like 10
yeah.
seconds and then says her line while the music plays over.
What irritated me more about her cameo was the, oh, we're gonna do that lasso of truth joke that we did in the Justice League.
And we're
Just
going to
put,
explain it to you. We're going to
yeah,
explain it. Did you forget about what this lasso does? Wink, wink.
yeah.
I'm going to tell you. Yeah. I feel like we're shitting on this. I'll say
No,
another thing I really liked. I
yeah,
really liked Kara. Supergirl
yes,
was great. I felt like I wanted more of her. again, there were times where it looked like she was standing in front of a really bad green screen. But there were other times where it looked really, really good. There were parts of that final fight sequence that did look really wonky, and I was like, stop, get away from this. I don't like this. But there were other times where I was like, this is great, and even I did see an interview with Michael Shannon where he was just like, yeah, this experience wasn't that great for me. And I could kind of see why. I'm pretty sure he was just in whatever they put Robert Downey Jr. in for his little Iron Man face cameo things, because there wasn't much of him, and they even did a little CGI with him sometimes that was just like, that does not even look like him.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be him in slow-mo. But I did like her fighting and just her being crazy, and I did like that. I knew that twist was coming, obviously, because of the trailers. And I kind of wished they hadn't have shown that, because I do like the twist of it being her versus Kal-El, but I did like her in the film.
Yeah, again, they were put in a weird spot for the marketing because she was the main focus of the marketing. Like, she was the one doing the press tour. Michael Keaton and Ezra Miller both sat it out because Warner Brothers was pushing her to do it. I was surprised Ezra Miller showed up at the premiere. But yeah, it was her and Michael Shannon doing a lot of press because those are all the interviews I've seen. But no, I thought she was great. There was a moment where she's up on the roof, like taking in the sun. I was like, okay, so a Kryptonian is regaining their powers on Wayne Manor right now. Like, that was just a cool moment for me, and I really enjoyed that. And I think her performance was great. I too wish that twist was hidden from us. Like, but, and I like the suit. The suit works well, and it does a good job of paying tribute to Man of Steel, which just celebrated its 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, and I did. I liked that they had the execution chair scene with Barry. That was from the comics, and I if I remember correctly, it did fail the first time, and it looked like he was dead, and then it worked the second time. I liked that they had her bring him up to the sky, and that looked good. When he is barely surviving from the first one, and he looks all fucked up in the veins and everything, and the burn marks. Like, I liked that scene. I thought that was great.
Yeah, they did the look of Barry after that, like with all that makeup, was phenomenal. Like, there's a lot, like. I know we shit on the CGI a lot in this, but some of the practical effects they did, like the makeup for him in those scenes, was really good. Like, I really enjoyed that.
Likewise, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say another practical thing that came right after that was second Barry reconstructing the bat suit and making it a Flash suit, and then turning in the bat copter like we've all done with those silicone masks that don't fit well, and I burst out laughing. I was like, yes, my pain.
I think I was the only one who laughed at that too, because those suits, you can't turn your neck, and I think that was such a great way to make a subtle joke of that. I think my favorite shot of this film, and I think it's practical, and I can't back this up, but I think they did it on a volume. It's the shot of young Barry after his mother dies, running out of the house past Barry, and it turns to night. I don't think that was a digital effect. I think they shot that practically, and they used a volume behind the house. I can't back that up, but that's what I want. That's what I want that to be, because that was such a beautiful shot, and it's in the trailer.
And I thought it was beautiful then too. Yeah.
Yeah. But it has such a great impact in that scene. But I'm also like, do they not have a phone inside the house? Like,
well, but at the same, I was like, okay, they're just showing that he was scared. Like, because he kind of had a look on his face, and then he runs. I didn't feel like he was running for a phone.
No, It was a beautiful moment, and there are some shots with, like, a lot of the stuff they do with Batman. Like, I was half expecting the bat wing to go in front of the moon again. It didn't happen. But the way they reveal the bat suits and the way they use his theme, like my wife said, every time they played that Danny Elfman music, she felt like a 5-year-old again, and just got like teary eyed. And I did too. Like, I'm a big movie score guy, you know this, and like just having that theme being like so present in this movie was perfect.
Yeah, I liked that. I did feel like in they show it in the trailers. They show both of his lines. Yeah, I'm Batman, and you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And the delivery in the trailers, I was like, okay, these got to be alternate takes. Like, they can't be how it is in the movie because he's on the same platform. And then when it happens in the movie, I was like, oh, he just did the "Yeah, I'm Batman." He didn't do the "Let's get nuts." So maybe they cut that from the film. And that was just something fun for the trailer. But then he's on the same platform saying another iconic Keaton line later in the film. And I'm like, did they just have him like recite a bunch of lines from the first two movies and then decide where to splice that into the film? Because it kind of felt that way.
COVID guidelines. You got to keep him separate from Ezra Miller.
It did feel like that. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna have you stand on this platform. We're gonna have you say your old lines.
Honestly,
until
though,
you are tired, and then we're gonna film you so you kind of look tired saying it.
honestly, there are 2 scenes where he's with Ezra Miller. Like every other scene, he's by himself. Like he's.
Oh yeah, they kept them separate a lot.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's why. Like, because this film was made during COVID. Like,
Could have been. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
solution.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I wonder if the COVID thing is part of the reason why the CG looks the way it does too. But
Maybe, but I feel like they've delayed this film so many times, and it's been a long time since we heard anything about reshoots that
yeah,
I do think it's probably leaning towards the other thing. Like, they were just after the post-merger, how much money do we want to sink into this, especially after all the drama? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I was really shocked there was no merch there. I was like, this is the first superhero film in forever that I've been to that there's no merch.
yeah.
And I know that's not all them. I know those are like third parties that want to do merch and stuff. But I was like, well, if it's all the way down to this level where they're not even trying to get people to buy expensive ass cups at the theater, then maybe they weren't willing to invest on the other side. Because it was more. I mean, it is brilliant but lazy. It was lazy at a lot of parts in the film. The suit didn't look right at parts of the film. The green screen didn't look right. There was just a lot of really wonky CGI, and it was too much to be like, oh, they didn't just decide to move forward.
So this film, according to IMDb, had a $200 million budget. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had a $250 million budget. So, like, I don't know how much of that budget had to go into COVID protocols and Michael Keaton's salary, but there's no way that this is a $50 million less movie. Like, it looks like it's at least $100 million less.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that was probably the reshoots, because I know they were doing a lot of reshoots at one point. Also, I'm sure some of it was for some of those rights. Also, there were some cameos in there, like what's his name? Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones was in the movie. Did you see him?
No, where was he?
So when the Flash takes that scruffy guy's a hot dog.
Mm-hmm.
It does it twice. Once in the beginning of the movie, once in the end. The time he takes it at the end, that's the director, Andy Muschietti. Yeah. But in the beginning, it's Jaime Lannister. It's Nicola Coster Waldo guy. It's him. And I'm like, that is the what? The why? Like, that's weird. I mean, that's like the Brad Pitt cameo in Deadpool. Like, it was so out of place. And I looked it up to confirm it, and it's confirmed that that's him.
I want that to be the origin story of the Reverse Flash so bad.
Like the bagel moment.
Yeah, like the bagel
Across
moment.
the
Like
Spider-Verse? Yeah.
we crossed
Yeah.
paths again, Flash. You stole my hot dog. Like,
Yeah.
but honestly, I would love to see him as Reverse Flash.
I mean, he could be. He could be.
Yeah,
I was
he
trying to place the actor that was old Barry as the monster because I thought that was a good performance. Was that wasn't just Ezra and Old Man Mick,
I
was it?
I have no idea.
Because
I
at some
thought it
points it
was.
sounded like him, but it didn't look like him. If it was him, it was good makeup.
Yeah, I thought it was just him, but I don't
Maybe it
know.
was him because it sounded like him, but it didn't look like him to me. So I don't know, but I did like that part.
Another cameo that I liked was Tamara Morrison
Yeah,
as
that was.
Aquaman's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when he showed up on screen, I really expected the Boba Fett theme to start playing.
That
So,
would have been. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so we talked about it a little bit. Do you think that George Clooney is Batman in Brave and the Bold?
No.
No. If he was,
But it is the same director, so who knows? Maybe. I mean, Brave and the Bold. It depend. Well, okay. So if it was the Brave and the Bold, as in a theatrical version, movie version of the cartoon Brave and the Bold, I could see it, because that Batman is very over the top,
mm-hmm.
big ass chin, kind of more stupid, silly than serious. But that's not what Brave and the Bold is going to be. They described Brave and the Bold as a combination of the Batman and Robin storyline and parts of the Batman Incorporated storyline, which is a much more serious. So it threw me when they called it Brave and the Bold, but I guess that's just it's not a nod to the Brave and the Bold kind of kids TV show.
Yeah,
It's just a famous phrase when you talk about DC Comics. So I just can't see him being in that storyline because that's a more serious storyline than a funny callback to Batman
yeah.
and Robin.
The part of me is like, I really don't want to see George Clooney as Batman again. I don't think he'd do it. But the other part of me is like, well, maybe I might be down for that because like as bad as Batman and Robin is,
And he admits it now.
and he admits it, as bad as it is, it's a fun watch. And if there's a chance that we can get more ice puns from Mr. Freeze, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, then sign me up.
Now maybe um we've seen other multiverse movies do callbacks to other things in fun ways. If the DCU can ever do that, then maybe we could get more of that. I just can't see him being bigger than a cameo in a future role. I think it's fun that he came back, especially after all the shit he got over the years. I think he overcame that shit because he owned it and he freely admitted to it and didn't try to be like, "Oh, fuck you trolls, I was great," like
Yeah.
he knows it wasn't great, and he's kind of accepted that, and that's the best way you deal with trolls half the time is you just accept it and then move on, and so I felt like this wasn't like redemption but just a fun like haha, all right, I
Yeah.
can't see it being more than that.
I the one thing that bums me out about it is you have those four films from the 80s and 90s, and you have two of the Batman represented in this movie. Sadly, there's no representation for Val Kilmer.
and
Um,
and and
I get
I'm
why.
glad that yeah, I'm glad that he got his day in Top Gun. I feel like
Yeah.
if I had to choose, I'd rather have the Top Gun callback with him and the kind of a sign off than him, especially having seen his documentary and how horrible an experience his Batman movie was for him. Like
Yeah.
it was traumatizing for him, and so I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't want to do it if he was asked, you know.
Yeah. But who knows? With all the news is going on with Batman Forever, we might still see more of his Batman.
Yeah. Who knows?
But we'll talk about that another time because I have a story to tell. Maybe there's so if Andy Muschietti is the director for Brave and the Bold, and they need to wrap up the multiverse story and connect the DCEU to the DCU, maybe that's the way they do it, and they do use George Clooney's Batman.
Maybe. I just feel like that would be such a big plot point that would be shoehorned into what James Gunn teased the Brave and the Bold supposed to be. If that's not really what it is, and he was just throwing something into the wind so far out in advance, then maybe. I do just feel like, I mean, it's a shitty situation, but if they weren't going to, I think they dropped the ball. There had to have been some type of contract things that prevented them from severely editing this film. And maybe it was contracts plus the Ezra Miller controversy, and they just didn't want to bring him back in for a bunch of reshoots. But the merger had happened, and they've already started announcing what the new slate would be, with the caveat that there were 3 films left, and it would have worked better if this was the last film with an event, but they didn't do that. Now we have Blue Beetle, which is probably going to be the most disconnected of the 3, but then we'll have Aquaman, and that just doesn't seem like an event film. So I just can't see them doing a passing of the baton. I feel like they're just going to have to be like, look, it's a hard cut. We're the first ones to have to do it. Fox figured out a way to turn their old X-Men into the new X-Men. The DC's MCU is still going. Sony's gotten away with their bullshit by eventually merging them all together with how many Spider-Mans they've had. You're just going to have to accept that we're starting at 0 and just move on. Like,
Yeah.
I can't see them doing it another way.
I can't either. But
maybe that's the best, because they've always been accused of emulating somebody else and failing to mirror as much. Maybe it's just best they start fresh.
Maybe. Well, any other thoughts on The Flash before we wrap this up?
It was fun. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I saw it. I took my wife. She liked it. I took Brian. He's a big Batman 89 fan. He liked it. When I got out of Guardians 3, I needed to see it again. When I got out of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I needed to see it again. I don't think I need to see this again. I don't.
I'll watch it again at home. I don't know if I'll buy it immediately, but definitely when it's on HBO Max. Max.
Right, right. I usually take my mom for a second screening of a superhero film.
Yeah.
And she wanted to go see a film this weekend. And out of all the films that are currently out there, she doesn't know what's going on with Fast X. She doesn't follow the Transformers movies, and she's not a big Little Mermaid fan to begin with. So I was like, this is probably going to be the easiest film that I could take you into, because you've seen all the DC films. She's like, yeah. Now having seen this, I ain't taking her to this film. I'm not going to try to explain the Coliseum thing to her. It's just going to be a nightmare to try to do that. So I don't think so. I'll probably see it like you when it comes out on streaming.
Yeah.
Which I wonder how many other people are going to think that, because I can't see this film having legs. There was a time where people were like, this is going to be the event film of the summer. I don't see that happening.
I don't either. Like I'm more impressed with the ending of Rise of the Beasts from Transformers than I am with the ending of this.
Brian told me he went to see that and he said it was good. Did you like it?
I didn't get to see it. I just the internet spoiled the ending for me. It's like, I know what you're setting up, and I'm like, okay, like I'm intrigued by this. Like that's an interesting idea. I can see where you're going with this. This movie ends. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I know there's an Aquaman movie coming out, but I don't know what happens after that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't see it. And we have Harrison Ford coming back as Indiana Jones in 2 weeks.
yeah.
Uh, and then 2 or 3 weeks after that, we have Oppenheimer. So I just can't see this. I think this. I sadly think this is gonna bomb. I don't
I
see this
they were predicting
making
it.
200 million domestically. Or even I don't. It's just I just don't see it making that money back.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm
Um,
surprised though. Are you not surprised? Because all the positive press, there was a time where this was getting showered as
the
the best in a long time, or holy crap, this movie's great. Did they see a finished version of this film?
what worried me the most about it was there were so many people saying I just saw an early screening of the Flash. You don't do that. You don't give the fans what they want, like an early screening like that, if you're not worried that the movie's gonna bomb. Like the fact that they've been doing early screenings for the last 2 months was
Yeah,
never a good sign.
they were doing
Eh,
a lot of influencer stuff, but I
yeah,
was like, and I never trust those because they always, they bring out the cast, they have little parties, they get
yeah,
swag bags, picture photo ops. I never trust those. But then they were, Tom Cruise was like, "This is great," and George Lucas or Steven Spielberg or somebody, or no, Stephen King was like, "This is great," and I was like, "These are odd names to come out and talk about this film. But maybe it really is something
yeah.
different."
And I mean, there like we did talk about there are highlights of this film. Like I think this is probably the strongest story that DC has told in a while from the DCEU. Like it doesn't have anywhere
In a
close as good of a
while.
story
There's
as
not very much. There's not very much to compare to. It's better than the Aquaman story, I'll say that. But
it's better than Shazam. It's better than Black Adam.
oh,
Um,
yeah, sure.
like story wise, I think it has a strong foundation. I think where the movie falters is the lack of money put into the effects. Like the video game special effects is like I don't know, like
I'm
that.
certain there's going to be a story that comes out in the next month that says they just decided to cut the budget on
Yeah,
they already spent so much.
and I think it's very telling that James Gunn has recently been like, okay, I need to cut back on what all I say on social media because this is about to come out, and I don't want to have to talk about it because at the end of the day, he wasn't really involved in this movie. He came in and when it was done, it maybe helped oversee like and guide the reshoots, but even then, like I don't know what it's trying to connect to going forward if you're not going to use George Clooney.
Yeah. So you said $200 million budget. I'm
Yeah.
seeing another article that suggested it might have been closer to 220. Avatar 2's budget was 250. Um,
Jeez.
Look at the difference between. I mean, that's scary difference.
It is.
I feel like a lot of that probably went into COVID protocols, probably went into Keaton, probably went into reshoots because it didn't go into post production. And
And,
I feel like somebody was like, "We've put in way too much, and now with the drama, we're cutting it."
I wonder how much of that was damage control.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm
So,
sure. And it
um,
sucks. I don't think now I'm not saying and maybe that was the case. Maybe some of these people saw such an early cut of this and just figured it's an early cut. These shots will be redefined. Even still, I don't think if the babies looked real, I don't think it would have made this that much better of a film. Like it's not a terrible film, but it's not a great film in my opinion. Like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was a great trilogy ender, a great send off to the characters. Maybe somebody talked out of hand when they were propping this up as an end to the Snyderverse, but I could have swore more than one person said that, and I was excited for that statement alone because I felt that the whole Snyder thing got really sloppy and nasty, and then everybody was blaming everybody and pointing fingers at the end. Even if this wasn't directed by Snyder, I wanted an end to that universe so we could move forward cleanly to the next one, and we didn't get that. So
y-
I just feel like they dropped the ball with this whole thing.
yeah, you know, when the Jamie Lannister cameo came up, I thought that was Zack Snyder.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I just realized that, but yeah, um,
It must be friends.
Man,
They gotta be friends. I have no idea why that was in there.
Yeah, I just want to know what they're doing. Like, I don't know what the plan is.
I feel like they're stuck. I feel like they're stuck because, like, I mean, maybe they should have just released this on Max and saved themselves some money. Like, because like, I would hate to be James Gunn because they brought him on so early, and they gave him a 2-year contract, which is weird because I think that contract is like up before the first of his films even comes to be, which is weird.
Yeah.
But they brought him on and they made him so public and they had him address all this stuff with 4 films because it included Shazam 2 yet to come out. So I feel bad for him because there are going to be people that associate these films with him and they're like, well, you're not doing anything. But yeah,
I think he even came
like
on.
They could be more clear about it.
He came on before Black Adam too, I think. Or was it right after?
Oh yeah. Oh no, it was because it was in the months before that because everybody was like, well, isn't The Rock like talking about how he's going to be the new hierarchy in the DCU, but they just hired James Gunn? Well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, so they still had 5 films left. They bring James Gunn on with 5 films left that maybe it was under contract that they had to put him out in theaters. It's weird. It's a weird spot for James Gunn to be in for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens.
Me too.
I do want to real quick because we don't do a great job of touching on this with the show sometimes, but I think that there was a moment in the film where Barry does acknowledge mental health stuff, like to the nurse after he saves all the babies. Like, you've just been through a traumatic event. Please seek help for your mental health because the Justice League doesn't do a good job of providing that. Trust me, I would know. I like that a lot, and I thought I like the levity of it. It comes off as a joke, but it's also kind of a serious message. Like, if you need help, don't be afraid to ask. People out there are willing to help you, and if you check out victimsandvillains.net, we have a lot of resources there for you as well. So, well, I think that does it for our review of The Flash. Josh, what are we doing next? I know. Do we want to cover Indiana Jones?
Yeah, because that's coming out next. And the next big film is Oppenheimer. I'm trying to think, like, what's the, well, Secret Invasion starts. So are we gonna?
We're gonna have to
do like touch base on that as it's going, or are we gonna wait till when it's done and then? I
would say we could probably touch on it when it, like, if we do Indiana Jones, touch on it and see what we think of the first few episodes, and then talk about Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, and then it'll probably, I don't know how long it is, so it'll probably be on or wrapping up by the time Oppenheimer comes out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited for that. Somebody recently said that, granted they've only seen the first 2 episodes, but that Secret Invasion felt like the Andor of the MCU, which is exciting to me because I love that.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too.
If we do Oppenheimer, I feel like we should do a crossover, like do Oppenheimer on this show and then do Barbie on my show and have Devin and Ryan on and do like a double feature.
Speaking of, there was a Barbie reference in this movie, oddly. Did you catch that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what is that about? It made Maddie laugh. What was the line? It was like, come on, Barbie, let's go party. Was that what it was?
That's what it was. Which I completely forget the context of it, but I was like, okay. Like,
they were just in the middle of a battle, and they were like, let's do this. I was like, okay.
Any reference to a song from Now Volume 1, I am here for.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Well, yeah, I feel like we could do Indiana Jones next. That sounds good.
All right. Well, that does it for this edition of Brilliant but Lazy. I'm Alan.
And I'm Josh. And trying to think of a good last line. What's a good last line, Alan?
I'm Batman.